Good afternoon. I'll give you a moment to settle in and start. Our mystery speaker does not need an introduction. For more than 23 years now, longer than some of you have even been alive, Tasleema Nasreen has been on the run. She fled her home, Bangladesh, but she has also been targeted in India, in Europe, in the United States. And periodically we hear of her pain, we hear of the fact that she has been physically assaulted or threats have been put against her. And then we sort of move on from it, but she does live with it. She's our mystery speaker today, and I do want to make the point that our mystery speaker is not a mystery speaker because, you know, we want to do this as some sort of publicity gimmick or to tell you, you know, to get you excited about the session, but simply because that is the level of threat that Tasleema Nasreen has lived with all her life. The reason for the threats, of course, are her writing, that her books have been banned in several places, but in Bangladesh, where her writings about the treatment of minorities in the first place began the first threats against her. Now, there are many books that you could read that would tell you something about what Tasleema Nasreen is. But it is her writings in the last few years in particular, which I think have shown a reflective side of what it means to be in exile and what is the price of freedom. To start with, ladies and gentlemen, may I get a round of applause for the very courageous Ms. Nasreen. I'm Suhasini Haider. I'm the diplomatic editor at The Hindu. I don't actually normally read much fiction, but it is actually what Ms. Nasreen has written about in her fiction as well as her non-fiction that has always been very attractive for its honesty. And so I do want to start this session by reading out something she wrote about living in exile and the kind of threats that she faces that I think has touched me the most. I often gently touch my neck, also put my hand behind my head, trying to understand what would be the feeling when they stab me from behind or hack me. Maybe it would be better if they just shot me in the head. I have suffered a lot in life. I don't want to suffer in death. Death should be quick. But will they listen to me? I can't imagine requesting them, begging for life. Instead, I should think I would close my eyes and sing some of my favorite Rabindra Sangeet to lessen the pain while being hacked. I don't know if you can lessen any pain like that, but I don't have any other option. Tasleema Nasreen, you write about pain very evocatively, but what really hurts more? Living in exile from your home or the threats that you face abroad?
You know, I believe in freedom of expression. But my freedom of expression has been violated by governments and also religious fundamentalists. You know, I am prevented from entering my country only because some people don't like my writings, don't like my ideals. And also I'm prevented from entering West Bengal, state of India, only because they don't believe in my freedom of expression. I think that freedom of expression is very necessary for democracy. And it hurts me that because those so-called, my country's so-called democracy, I have been living in exile for 24 years, and my books are banned. I was, in West Bengal, my mega serial for TV that I wrote was also banned. And many newspapers stopped publishing my articles. Also publishers stopped publishing my books. It hurts me. I think that that freedom of expression should be respected. That hurts me, actually. I know that fundamentalists do not believe in women's rights, human rights. They don't believe in freedom of expression. They want to kill me. But why should government, instead of supporting me, who is fighting for women's rights, human rights, secularism and humanism, supporting those fanatics who do not believe in democracy, who only believe in theocracy, and who do not believe in women's rights and human rights?
You're saying what pains you is that even democracies don't see the rights that you should. Now, we all know a little bit of what has happened since 1994, since the publication of Lajja. But tell us something about what happened before that. You grew up in Mymensingh. You actually studied to be a doctor. You could have been a physician. What drew you to writing? And why is it that you chose to continue with it despite having the option of a much possibly cushier life as a doctor?
I worked as a doctor in Bangladesh public hospital for more than 8 years. Actually, I started writing when I was 13 years old. And I used to write poems. I edited a poetry magazine when I was 17. And I continued publishing and editing that magazine. And I wrote short stories. And my poems and short stories were published in Little Magazine, also in national newspapers. And then I studied medicine. While studying medicine, I couldn't continue my writing that much, but I did a little bit. But after I became a medical doctor, I kind of, started writing articles for the newspapers, and my books got published. My first book was published in 1986, and then I continued publishing my other books, mostly poetry books, and then the books of articles, especially on women. I started writing articles for newspapers about women's rights and freedom.
And that's where
in mid-80s.
It started from. You told me a story which I think would touch anyone, particularly here in South Asia, which is that you had trained as a physician, and yet when your mother was unwell, you were not able to go back and even tend to her because of all the threats you faced. And of course, in Bangladesh itself, you have not been able to return. Because we're asking today what the price of freedom is, I do want to ask if you think it has been worth it from that time in Mymensingh.
I didn't like to ask for apology because I knew that what I said, what I wrote, I told the truth. And my mother died. And then when my father was on his deathbed, I pleaded, I cried. I asked Bangladesh government to allow me to see my father only for 2 days. But Bangladesh government didn't allow me to enter Bangladesh. My father died. And many of my relatives, my grandmother, whom I loved very much, she also died. And I was not allowed to see her in her last days. And my brothers also died, and many of my uncles whom I liked very much, whom I loved very much. I couldn't see them before they died. But I would not, I would not say sorry for my writings. I would not ask for apology. I know that I would never give up. Come what may, I will never be silenced. I will continue fighting all kinds of fundamentalism I will continue my fight for secularism and humanism.
I think the audience's reaction should tell you that there are so many out there who would support entirely your decision to do what you did. My question, though, was, do you think when you look back, it has all been worth it, the price of freedom you've paid?
I think so.
You do. Does it bother you, though, as an author, that most of the conversation is always about the controversies, most of the conversation is always about the outrage and the threats, than it is about your writing itself?
So it is not my fault. And controversy is not good, you know. If you say new things about, if a society is very misogynistic, if most people do not like to see that women are treated equally, then if I say about women's equal rights, there will be a controversy. So I think controversy is good. You should not write only those things what people would like. To create an equal society, to have women's equal rights, to get, human rights, and to create a secular society, you have to talk about those human rights and women's rights, even though it would create controversy, because misogynists always would try to hurt you, always try to attack you if you want women's freedom. And also the same thing, religious fanatics and misogynists, they don't want women's freedom, women's equality. Because they would go against you, you would be threatened by them. So would you stop yourself? No. So I would continue fighting against them. I know that probably I would be killed by them. But I'm not afraid.
You know that probably it's do you feel that inside you, that a violent sort of
I was
ending?
attacked by them many times. So, many secular bloggers, many atheist bloggers were hacked to death in Bangladesh. In the last 2 years, there were many of them. And many of them actually became an atheist and humanist and feminist after reading my books.
Were you always an atheist, or were you religious when you grew up before that?
I think people are born not with a religion, they're all atheists. So my father was very secular person. I think he was an atheist. But he never forced me to practice religion, but my mother did. My mother was a very religious person. My mother asked me to read the Quran in Arabic or pray namaz in Arabic. And Arabic is not our language. Our language is Bengali. So I asked my mother when I was 8 years old, can't I read namaz or pray in Bengali? She said, no, you have to pray in Arabic. I said, why? You said that Allah knows everything. Doesn't Allah know Bengali? Why do I have to pray in Arabic? And also, my mother said that if you say bad about Allah, your tongue will fall off. Then I was a very curious child. I went to the bathroom and locked the door of the bathroom and said everything. I cursed.
Did that
Allah.
make you...
No, and then I waited. In the beginning, I was afraid. Should I say what I said in the bathroom?
No, please, let's not. But did that make you feel that...
I was kind of afraid that my tongue would fall off. Then I saw that my tongue didn't fall off. Actually, I read the Quran in Arabic, and I didn't understand anything. I always wanted to know the meaning of the verses that I read. And my mother even didn't know the meaning of the verses that she read. Then one day I found the Bengali translation of the Quran and I read, and you know what? I became an atheist.
All right. Some would say that what you found out in that bathroom was either that God does not exist or that God accepts all. Which would you say it is? In the bathroom, where you was waiting to see if the tongue would fall off, some would say that it proved that God doesn't exist, or that it proves that God accepts all. Which would you say it is?
I think God doesn't exist.
All right. That's very honest of you. You spoke about freedom of expression. In India, Article 19 of the Constitution guarantees freedom of expression. Yet, it imposes what are called reasonable restrictions. I can read those out to you. It is if you hurt the security of the state, friendly relations with other states, public order, decency, morality, contempt of court, defamation, or incitement to an offense. Should freedom of expression be absolute, according to you?
I think so. Everybody should have the right to offend others. I offend misogynists. Without offending, I don't think that freedom of expression exists.
But can I say that reasonable restrictions is a subjective thing? Who decides? Who decides what you have the right to say or when they are offended? Because I might be offended by something that somebody else does not find offensive at all.
Yeah, but people should, I think that tolerance should be practiced.
Okay, I'll put the question more directly to you. You defend your own writing. You've said just now that freedom of expression, in a sense, should be absolute. But I've heard you in interviews say that, for example, the Islamist preacher Zakir Naik's television channels should be banned. Do you think that then there is somewhere where reasonable restrictions apply?
I am for freedom of expression, everybody's freedom of expression. I would not have said that Zakir Naik's television should be stopped until if I didn't know that many Islamists in Bangladesh who killed many people in Gulshan Cafe,
Holy Artisan,
that terrorist attack, those terrorists actually were most of them were influenced by Zakir Naik, and then they said that they regularly watch that Peace TV.
But by the same token, could I not ask you that when you write something and someone says they are offended by it to the point of wanting to speak about violence, then they too are saying what they are doing is correct?
No, I'm against violence. I never appreciate any kind of violence. I'm always against violence. And people who are influenced by me also are against violence.
All right. I mean, to make the case that, for example, you went to Aurangabad. You were not allowed to even go and see the Ajanta-Ellora caves because it was considered a public order threat. Many have written that that was an abdication of the state's responsibility, that you should have been allowed to stay in Kolkata, despite the fact that the government felt that a riot had been caused by something you had said. Where do you say, given that this is now your personal experience, where do you say the line should be drawn between your freedom to express and somebody's freedom to perhaps issue a threat in response?
You know, those were created, those drama that in Calcutta, those people who shouted against me were not spontaneously, were not at all any spontaneous reaction. The people who took to the street in 21st of November in 2007, they were angry against the government because some Muslims were killed in Shingur and Nandigram. So there were procession against the government. But suddenly, some people, took a banner that Tasleema go back. It was not at all for me. I lived in Calcutta almost without security. Only 2 policemen were there in plain clothes, and I used to go to Park Circus and Ripon Street, all those areas were Muslim areas. Nothing, never, ever, anything bad happened to me. Suddenly all Muslims were against me because at that time the government, lost Muslim sympathy, so government wanted to get the Muslim votes, so they thought that I'm, labeled as
Islamophobe.
anti-Islam, so if they threw me out of the state, then they would get votes. They would get Muslim votes, which actually didn't happen. Right. They didn't get Muslim votes, but I was used, I was used everywhere for political reasons, for political purposes. But I am not at all a political person. I write for women's equality and I write for, the betterment of society.
You spoke about the idea that you are seen as someone who's anti-Islam. You have certainly written that Islam requires a process of reform, that Islamic countries must separate religion from the state.
It is very necessary. Yeah, separation of state and religion is urgently necessary.
Some would ask, why make the distinction with Islam? After all, we've seen majoritarian states around the world. We are in fact moving, many would think, into a more majoritarian world where perhaps a more Christian America, a more Jewish Israel, a more Buddhist Myanmar, or even a more Hindu India is our reality.
It's not that I criticize only Islamic fundamentalism. I criticize all religious fundamentalism. And, so maybe I talk about Islam and Islamic fundamentalism more because I lived in a Muslim majority country and I know Islam much more than any other religions. But I know that women are oppressed because of religions, all religions, and culture, customs, traditions. So I write against all of them.
All right. Do you think that the world is actually going through a phase?
No, because, we talk about Islam more because you should not say that all religions are equally bad. All religions are not equally bad. So we know Boko Haram, we know about ISIS, we know about terrorist attacks. Who are doing all those?
Right.
Unfortunately, they're Muslim fundamentalists or Muslim terrorists.
But some would say that perhaps you are confusing the religion. I mean, you have made the point, actually, that it's not just what is politically correct to say, which is that religion in practice is abused. You are actually saying religion in theory is the problem.
Yeah, but theory, you can find those, anti-human and anti-women verses in almost all religious texts. Okay. But those non-Muslim religious society, changed a lot. they separated religion and state.
Right.
And they created laws which are based on equality and justice, not based on religion. But you would see only in Islamic countries that still Sharia laws exist, 7th century's laws exist, and women have been suffering because of that. And there is no equality between men and women in marriage, child custody, and divorce, and inheritance. You know, I am not saying that Hinduism actually gives women equality.
Some practices certainly do not.
Some practices are still anti-women. So I write about that also.
Sure, and you have been criticized for
by
doing
Hindu
that
fanatics a lot. And not only that, I write about Christianity. There are Christian fundamentalists, Jewish fundamentalists who are making women's life hell. So it's not that I only write about Muslim fundamentalism.
You've criticized in particular the lynchings over beef in India, going to the point of saying this is not the India you know. What do you think has changed?
I liked, I left everything. I left Europe. I'm an European citizen. I am a permanent resident of the United States of America. I left those countries for India because I love India. Why do I love India? Because of the greatness of India that I have seen. I have witnessed since 70s. You know, when I published my little magazine, many Bengali writers from West Bengal used to write for my magazine. I used to visit India, and I really love this country. So many languages you have, so many religions, so many ethnicities, and people here all live together. And it's a great country, and also India was so generous, so kind to the people from, whoever came from outside. So I also was loved and respected here. And, I love to live in India, even though there is a threat, but I think that it's a great country. I don't like to see that some people are killed only because they eat something which other peoples do not like to eat. And also I didn't like that how that man in Rajasthan was killed.
That's right.
And then
in
was burned afterwards.
You actually said that video reminded you of ISIS. That's something that had upset a lot of people in India.
No, but that kind, I didn't see, even though that newspaper wrote that, the newspaper changed the title of my article, but it was not written by me.
Could I ask you, because that is important, you're making the point that a secular society is our ideal, that according to you, that is the ideal. Some would turn it around and say that perhaps the problem is that it is political power that requires religious majoritarianism to back it. You used the phrase in one of your writings called the ideologically inebriated mobs. And the idea that those mobs only are able to be ideologically inebriated because political sanction comes to them. The question being that is religion the problem, or is the politics of religion the problem?
Here the politics is the problem. I have seen here, many people are saying that there is a conflict between Hinduism and Islam, or there is a conflict between, in the West there is conflict between Christianity and Islam, or in Israel and Palestine there is conflict between Judaism and Islam. I don't think the conflict, of course there is a conflict. Conflict is not between Hinduism and Islam, or Christianity and Islam, or Judaism and Islam. The conflict is between secularism and fundamentalism. The conflict is between rational, logical mind and irrational, blind faith. The conflict is between modernism and anti-modernism. The conflict is between innovation and tradition, and between the people who value freedom and who do not.
That's very well put. So I will end by asking you, because I can see that this is an audience that would like to ask you questions. I do want to speak a little about terrorism, because you've made the point now that the conflict is not necessarily one of religions, but of thinking, of a thought process. What fuels terrorism, though? You've written often that it is not enough to kill terrorists. You cannot kill terrorists by killing the terrorist humans. You have to kill its root cause.
Yeah.
What is that root cause? Because many think injustice is the root cause, the reason why people take to terrorism.
But about Muslim terrorists, if you ask them why did they become terrorists, all of them, or most of them, would say that it is written in our religion, in the Quran. And you will find numerous verses that says that if you kill unbelievers or non-Muslims, and jihad is mandatory for every Muslim. You have to create this world, land of Islam. So everybody should be Muslims. Everybody should believe in Islam. Darul Harb or Darul Islam. Darul Harb is that land of enemies, and Darul Islam is land of Islam. So you have to destroy Darul Harb, and you have to make whole world Darul Islam. So those terrorists believe it. Those terrorists, of course, are brainwashed. Those terrorists are brainwashed with Islam.
And many would argue that they are not brainwashed by Islam as many people understand it. There are enough preachers out there who issue fatwas against this kind of jihad.
Yeah. My mother was a very religious person, and she was the most honest person I have seen in my life. She was very generous, very kind. So it is that her Islam was like that, But the terrorist people, they always talk about the verses that they read in the Quran, or, their gurus told them that if you kill non-believers and non-Muslims, you would go to heaven.
So what
they want to go to heaven. They want to enjoy wine, 72 virgins in paradise.
What you are saying is that a religious reform is intrinsic to fighting terrorism in the world.
Yeah. If you do not have, those madrasas and mosques actually are breeding grounds for terrorists. You have to secularize society. You have to secularize, state. State must be separated from religion. Then you would see that we would not, and the Sharia laws should be banned. And if you would say that I should not be against banning, yes, I am against Sharia laws, because Sharia laws are anti-women, freedom and rights of human. Right. So Sharia laws there should not be any Sharia laws. All laws. There should be actually one law for everyone. And I believe in uniform civil code. And you shouldn't say, many people here, it's very strange. If I believe in, if I talk about uniform civil code, actually I started talking about uniform civil code when I was living in Bangladesh. In Bangladesh, Hindu women do not have any rights because they do not have any laws based on equality. They have those old Hindu laws where women do not have any right to get, property of fathers. They have any right to divorce their husbands. A Hindu man can marry as many women they want to marry.
They haven't had the legal framework India has had since 1951.
I always wanted uniform civil code in Bangladesh, also here. I think uniform civil code should be everywhere in the world. But whenever I talk about uniform civil code here, many secularists and humanists and leftists say that, oh, you support BJP. No, I don't support BJP.
You've in fact been critical of some of the things.
It's very strange. And you know, if I am attacked by Muslim fanatics, they don't support me. As if, and they are very vocal against Hindu fanatics, but they are not at all vocal against Muslim fanatics.
You're saying you should be protected by the very people who are, speaking against the state today.
Yeah, so I have seen it, and it really, I'm so sad for it, because I am not rightist. I don't support any kind of religious party or religious fanaticism, but when I am attacked, when I have problem, those leftists and Indian secularists and liberal, even though I am a secularist, and Indian secularists do not support me. And I get support, unfortunately, from the right-wingers. Even though I'm not a right-winger, I believe in left ideology, and I believe in women's rights and human rights, but leftists who should believe in human rights and women's rights do not support me, even though I dedicated my life for women's freedom. And very strange that they do not support uniform civil code. They have no problem if Muslims have their Muslim personal laws, and because of that laws, women have been suffering. Muslim women have been suffering.
But
here, Indian leftists have no problem if Muslim women suffer.
Well,
so they don't believe in Muslim women's human rights.
It's certainly a larger political debate, which, of course, we can continue to have. But I do want to come back to your work. I made the mistake at the beginning of asking you if it was a problem that people want to discuss the controversies and not Tasleema Nasreen, the author, and Tasleema Nasreen, the poet. So give us a sense of what you value the most in terms of your own writing. Most in the audience would have heard of Lajja. Few would have heard of the 7-part memoirs that have followed, or of the poetry books that have followed as well. And I know that there is a poem that you want to read out for our audience today. And I will come to questions after that, so please keep them ready.
I have written 44 books. Many of them are poetry books, and some are novels, and some are essay books. But anyway, you want me to read a poem?
I think the audience does.
Okay, just 1 second. My poem, the name of my poem is You Go Girl. They said, take it easy, said, calm down, said, stop talking, said, shut up. They said, sit down, said, bow your head, said, keep on crying, let the tears roll. What should you do in response? You should stand up now. Should stand right up. Hold your back straight. Hold your head high. You should speak. Speak your mind. Speak it loudly. Scream. You should scream so loud that they must run for cover. They will say, you are shameless. When you hear that, just laugh. They will say, you have a loose character. When you hear that, just laugh louder. they will say, you are rotten. So just laugh even louder. Hearing you laugh, they will shout, you are a whore. When they say that, just put your hands on your hips, stand firm, and say, yes, I am a whore. They will be shocked. They will stare in disbelief. They will wait for you to say more, much more. The men amongst them will turn red and sweat. The women amongst them will dream to be a whore like you.
I think, Ms. Nasreen, I can say on behalf of the audience that we're very grateful for your honesty. We're very grateful for your feminism as well. I think many of us may not have read some of your other writings and more contemporary writings, and we hope to read more of that. Could I just see with hands up, where the questions are, and I'll try to come to you with 2 or 3 questions at a time with your permission. Go ahead, sir, in the audience there.
Madam, I understand that you spoke about freedom and your prosecution and all that. Okay, and I would still think that economic crime is a serious crime, and economic threat is a serious threat. So my question is that India being a third world country, Bangladesh being a third world country, the serious crimes are economic ones. So the question would be, did you run for office or job, something they might have felt you're a little bit lawyer qualified, and maybe because of the prosecution.
All right, I get your point. Basically, the question about whether it is poverty that is the greatest oppressor. Go ahead.
So, in India, censorship laws are very high, and do you think that censorship equals to fascism, and is that the reason why India is still a third world country?
Could you repeat that?
So, in India, censorship everywhere.
Censorship.
Censorship. Yeah. So, do you think censorship equals to fascism, and is that the reason why India is a third world country?
Nice question. And I'll just take one more. Is there...
I'm waiting for the question where on the stage itself, Suhasini, were asking the question to the Tasleema regarding that what's going on here in Tamil Nadu now about the Andal issue. It's a religious fundamentalism about that. What she talked about that one, that she insisted again and again about that one. So what's the comment about on that this particular Andal issue we have going on?
Do you have
here?
a question, sir?
No, the thing is that the religious fundamentalism in Tamil Nadu.
All right, understood. Do you want to take a few of those, especially the very good question here about whether censorship is fascism itself?
Excuse me, ma'am.
Please, let me...
It's a simple...
Okay.
Hello. It's a very simple question from my side. It's, do you pray? If yes, whom do you pray to? If not, then what is your faith and what is your belief? Whom do you have faith in?
Thank you.
No, I don't pray. I believe in science. I don't believe in religion. And censorship, I am heavily censored. My books get censored, my articles get censored, and banned. I'm against banning and censorship. But I think that the worst form of censorship is self-censorship. And I don't do.
Yeah, nobody would accuse you of censoring yourself, that's for sure.
I think if all courageous writers, if they do not believe in self-censorship, I think it would be good, and we want that.
All right. The gentleman here had a question on fundamentalism, and he had a very interesting question on the idea that actually, while you say that it's religious fundamentalism that is the worst oppressor, could it be economic as well?
Yeah.
Poverty being the biggest oppressor?
Which one is bigger? I don't talk about this. Of course, there are many people who talk about economic problems, but I, as an author, I would not, I decided that I would write about women. If, of course, I write against the poverty, and also that women are not allowed to take a job, and women are poor. Women are poorer than men, even though women work a lot. And also women are less paid. So I write against all those problems, but it was not that, there are people who write about economic problem. I write about all the problems, religious problems and women's that problems. So of course, because I write about women's equalities and I fight against all the misogyny and inequalities and injustices. Doesn't mean that I don't say that economic problem is a real big problem.
But that's not what your writing is about.
And because of economic problem, I don't think that that the people are becoming terrorists. Nowadays, you would see that, in Dhaka, you have seen, and also Osama bin Laden and Muhammad Atta, they're rich people. Many people say, because of poverty, because of inequality, many people are becoming Muslim terrorists, but which actually is not true. You would find that doctors and engineers and rich people are becoming,
as well,
and educated also.
So the root causes lie elsewhere. We have time for one round of questions more.
Hello, ma'am. Ma'am, you said you don't believe in God. Then who do you think created you, and who do you think is protecting you?
Important question. There was a gentleman in the front here, who really had a question.
Yeah, so at the outset, I would like to appreciate that you have so much of courage to get your views out. Many people don't have that today. So my question is there any prudence in looking at the past with respect to religion, since it's been going on for thousands of years and it's still staying? There is some reason that it's sticking on from decades. So, and is there any prudence in looking at the past to correct the future as you can see it today, number one? And the second part is, what do you think can be done with terrorists, especially since people like Sri Ravi Shankar, you have heard him, say that terrorists have one really important thing that other people don't, and that's their resolve. Only their goals are wrong.
Okay.
So
thank
what
you.
would
We'll hold it there. There's a lady at the back. So one second.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Many Western countries are trying to ban the usage of religious symbols in public areas, such as wearing an hijab. What is your take on that?
Sorry, say that again. Wearing hijab.
Hijab in public spaces. What is your take on that? Do you think that should be banned?
And the last question to sir here.
Actually, Islam believes in brotherhood. There are two sects, Sunnis and Shias. They kill each other when they were praying in the mosque. The people who were killed, when they were killed, they said Allah, Allah, Allah. The children said Allah, Allah, Allah. I am very ashamed of that December 6th incident in India. But many things are happening place. They are killing,
Sir,
they are declaring. Why they are killing each other when they were praying in the mosque? In the mosque.
Fair point.
They die
Thank
crying
you,
Allah, Allah, Allah. Is it honest?
And he said that religion exists. Actually, religion exists because we try to make it exist. I think that if we don't indoctrinate children, if we don't, with religion, if we don't teach religion, if we don't talk about religion to our children, then I think that religion will disappear soon.
All right.
So another thing is hijab. I believe in personal freedom. If anyone wants to wear hijab, okay, she has the right to do it. But in some countries, they banned burqas in public schools. It's because of the identity. You know, if someone is wearing burqa, I don't know whether the person is a terrorist. I don't know whether...
So you're saying the face must not
be covered.
All right,
So.
that is a thing. The lady here asked you, who made you if you don't believe in God?
I believe in all those science theory, Big Bang, etc.
All right.
And you said that Shia and Sunni fundamentalists killed Shias because killed Ahmadiyas, killed Qadiani, you know, because they believe that those Shias and are not real Muslims. So they don't hesitate to kill them even when the Shias are praying. And Shias also kill Sunnis. So this hatred and violence, actually, you know, we have seen in many Muslim countries, and not only Muslim countries, in other countries too. You know, in America, a man who killed people in a concert.
That's right.
He was not a Muslim, but
as you found out after your tweet about Stephen Paddock.
Yeah, so it is not my fault, you know.
Just to give you the context, Ms. Nasreen had tweeted that if this turns out to be an Islamist terrorist, an ISIS terrorist, then you understand why so many generalize about Muslims around the world. But then you did take that back.
Yeah, because then I saw that actually he was not a Muslim terrorist. But most terrorists, unfortunately, are Muslim terrorists.
Hello. First of all, I'd like to say the worst form of self-censorship is ending up in the balcony, because there's no way getting it out there. But
we wish there was more space for all down here, but
yeah,
you understand the constraints.
Yeah, definitely. But my question to you, ma'am, is when we come and live in a society, we trade freedom for security. And like a society that's completely free, you have zero security. And a society where it's completely secure, you have zero freedom. But what about freedom of expression? Is it that it's untradeable for security? What about, why is it so important that even when your life is being threatened, we can't give it up? That's the question I had.
Great question, thank you. And there's a lady in the back.
Good afternoon, ma'am. So my question is, this is something we all been observing recently, that there are a lot of men and women who believe in gender equality and equality for women, but they'd rather call themselves egalitarian than feminists. Do you have something to say to those people? Why is there this hesitancy against feminism?
Thank you. I think that's all we have time for, but egalitarian or feminist, and the question about trading security.
I don't know the people who believe in women's rights, why they hate the word feminism or feminist. I love this word. You know, even though those we heard that the communists believe in women's equality, but how many women were in their Politburo?
Or even today.
So we have to fight for women's rights separately, and I love to call myself feminist. I call myself humanist too. But, you know, you cannot be a humanist without being a feminist.
You're also in a
So many people say, I'm not a feminist, but I'm a humanist. They're lying. You know, you have to be, you are not a humanist if you are not a feminist.
And the gentleman in the balcony had the question about, is it so important to have freedom of expression?
Yes,
even if it means the life of somebody.
Yes, it is.
You have no doubts about it, having lived the life you have?
No.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Nasreen is going to... You're